Hey everyone, Dark Magician of Team Sorcerers here, and welcome back to What If Wednesday. And this is another suggestion from Joseph Barfield, who asks, what if Behemoth beat X-Terminator in the Fourth Wars? I mean, I agree that that should have happened. I think it was bullshit that X-Terminator won that one, especially since Behemoth did flip X-Terminator over a few times, whereas X-Terminator failed to flip Behemoth over. But then again, even if Behemoth beat X-Terminator and went through to a second semi-final, I don't think it would have got further. It would have gone up against Wild Thing and lost against it. Because obviously at this point Behemoth is still a slow robot, whereas Wild Thing is very quick, very nippy. I mean, maybe Behemoth could flip it a couple of times, but Wild Thing would just get back up and shove Behemoth all over the place and head into the CPZs and stuff. And even if it went to the judges, Wild Thing would win on control and aggression. Now, if it was the Series 5 version of Behemoth onwards, then Behemoth would have won, but not in this scenario. And then the rest of the Fourth Wars would play out the same way. However, this would mean that again, the seats would be swapped over, so Behemoth would be 14th and X-Terminator would have been 15th. So Behemoth and Supernova would be in Dominator 2's heat, X-Terminator and Immortalis would be in Really Big Cheese's heat. So the rest of the heats in the Fifth War play out the same way. But going into Heat F, all the fights play the same way. Behemoth does barely beat Supernova. Matilda should be thanked for that, I guess. Then Behemoth would face Corkscrew, but because Corkscrew's weapon isn't working, it means that Behemoth can flip it over instantly and go on to face Dominator 2 in the Heat Final. And I think I already went over this scenario, but yeah, Dominator 2 wouldn't be able to do much against Behemoth. The axe wouldn't do any significant damage unless it's got the lid with the link, which is unlikely. But yeah, Behemoth, well, this would go the same way as the Steel Avenger fight, basically, with Behemoth flipping Dominator 2 all over the place and might even get it out of the arena. In any case, Behemoth would go through to the semi-finals yet again. Then in the other heat, the fights play out the same way. Exterminator would go up against Crush Station and start out quite well, shoving Crush Station around, and then of course it ends up breaking down and losing drive. So Crush Station still goes through to the Heat Final and gets beaten by Really Big Cheese. Although for the sake of argument, even if Exterminator did go through, I don't think it would have beaten Really Big Cheese. I think Really Big Cheese would have flipped it all over the place. So that would be that. Then Really Big Cheese and Behemoth would fight each other in the semi-finals. Really Big Cheese would start strong, flipping Behemoth a couple of times. Don't think it would be able to get it out of the arena. Yeah, especially since Behemoth can be more defensive than Dominator 2. And as a result, Really Big Cheese still ends up breaking down, and Behemoth would go through. The other semi-final fights and the loser's melee would play out the same way, and then Behemoth would go up against Hypnodisc, a rematch from the All-Stars, but this time Hypnodisc is in fully working order. And unless Matilda can save Behemoth again, which I highly doubt, X-Terminator would, Hypnodisc would just lay into Behemoth, damaging the back, maybe the sides, but definitely the scoop. Like, that would have tears in on the side, and it would largely go the same way as before, only with Hypnodisc in fully working order. The fight might last to a judge's decision, but I think Hypnodisc would come out on top here. And then the rest of the Fifth Wars plays out the same way. But it does mean Behemoth would be seeded in the Sixth Wars over Dominator 2. Behemoth would be the 6th seed instead. And basically, Behemoth and the robots it fights would swap places with Dominator 2 and the robots it fights. So Behemoth, Disco Inferno, Derek 2 and Tridente are in Heat J instead. So that fight plays out the same way with Behemoth and Disco Inferno going through. Smidsy and Common Getrix win the other fight. Behemoth would then go up against Smidsy and would more than likely beat Smidsy just because there's so much more Behemoth can do here. Meanwhile, Disco Inferno fights Common Getrix, a rematch from that Mayhem in Extreme 1, but it ends up going up pretty much the same way, with Disco Inferno doing significant damage to Common Getrix, whereas Common Getrix can't do that much. So Behemoth and Disco Inferno meet again in the Heat final, much to the dismay of the Behemoth boys, but luckily at this point Disco Inferno's disc stops working, and Behemoth takes advantage of this and would probably flip Disco Inferno out of the arena or dump it in the pit and then go through to a 4th semi-final. Then in Heat L, Bigger Brother and Killer Carrot 2 win their respective fights. Same with Dominator 2 and Hydra. And I don't know who'd fight whom afterwards though. But yeah, if Behemoth fought, not Behemoth, if Bigger Brother fights Dominator 2 and Killer Carrot 2 fights Hydra, here's how it would work. Now, I know obviously Dominator 2 did beat Bigger Brother in the 6th war, but that was only because Bigger Brother was having problems at the end. It was just slow and sluggish, which I guess lost it that judge's decision. But at this point, Bigger Brother is more healthy and in fully working order, and would be able to flip Dominator 2 all over the place. And I feel like it would go to the judges again, but this time Bigger Brother takes it. And then in the other fight, it's hard to say who'd win between Hydra and Killer Carrot 2. Either Killer Carrot 2 would flip Hydra over and it can't get back up, and then fight Bigger Brother in the Heat final and lose to Bigger Brother, or Hydra might be able to beat Killer Carrot somehow, then go through to the Heat final and then get flipped over by Bigger Brother again. Either way, Bigger Brother is winning that heat. Semi-final 1 plays out the same way. Semi-final 2 is mostly the same, only we've got Behemoth fighting Bigger Brother, and that fight plays out pretty much the same way as their fight in the real timeline, and it should be all over before Bigger Brother has those problems. So Behemoth is now fighting a Spawn again in Hypnodisc and the Loser's Melee. And it basically plays out the same way as if it was Bigger Brother in this one, with Hypnodisc ricocheting off one of the robots, then the arena wall and breaking down, with Spawn again still having interference problems. So Behemoth wins that one and gets right back in. And then to match the timeline, Bigger Brother would still fight Terahertz and lose, and then Behemoth would fight Tornado, a rematch from the Challenge Belt in Extreme 1, but I don't see Behemoth winning this one. It would just get pushed around too much by Tornado. I mean, it would be another good, close, epic fight, just like their previous fight, but yeah, chances are Tornado would win this one, and then the grand final just plays out the same way. Behemoth would be seeded higher for the 7th Wars, but we'd still end up with the same seeds anyway, only they'd be in a different order. So again, I'm not going to go over this one because of how things were done for the semi-finals. So yeah, the 7th Wars goes basically the same way. But yeah, that is pretty much what would happen if Behemoth beat X-Terminator on a judge's decision. Yeah, it would make the semi-finals like 3 other times and be more successful than it was in the real timeline. But then just fall short at getting to the grand final. So yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching.